Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I'm gonna give folks about 30 seconds or so to make their way into the room and get logged in. But thank you all for joining. Appreciate everybody being here on time. Excellent. Welcome on in, everyone. We'll give folks just a couple more seconds here to make their way into the room. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the program, and other folks will keep streaming in as we go through the presentation. But thank you all so much for taking the time out of your afternoon to join us and learn a little bit more about the opportunities that we have here at Emory, and today specifically regarding the Barton Clinic and all of the opportunities that they offer through their multiple avenues of involvement. So we'll get started. We've got a great session here with two of our professors who I'll introduce in just a moment. Just for our housekeeping items, again, we are in a webinar format for today's session. We'll have plenty of time to answer any questions you might have about the clinics, about Emory, about Atlanta, the opportunities that are there. So if you do have those questions, feel free to keep them rolling in throughout the session. You can use either the chat box or the question and answer function. Either one will get those questions in front of us. We'll be able to unmute you and get you in front of the professors here to ask your question and get all of the information that you need. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. This is our last session for this week, but do keep in mind that we do have a bunch of other great sessions coming up next week, some opportunities to meet our alumni, learn a little bit more about our public interest work here at Emory. We've got some financial aid sessions and some other more logistical pieces as well for you. So I encourage you to sign up for those as much as possible, just to make sure you get settled out. So without further ado, we'll get started with this session with the Barton Clinics. So today I'm joined by two of our professors, two of the directors over at the Barton Clinics and the opportunities there. So we're joined by Professor Melissa Carter, who's the Executive Director of the Barton Child Law and Policy Center. She received both her JD and bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And her work focuses on the legal rights and interests of children and youth involved with the juvenile court, child welfare, and juvenile justice systems. We're also joined by Professor Randy Waldman, who is the director of the Barton Juvenile Defender Clinic. She received her JD from the University of Chicago Law School and her Bachelor of Arts from Haverford College. In her role, she engages in policy work related to juvenile justice issues and teaches courses in juvenile justice and education law. So just a brief introduction to our professors. Thank you both so much for joining and talking with our admitted students and providing this opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about Barton. So I'm going to hand that over to both of you and let you take it from here.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be here with all of you. We do have a pretty brief PowerPoint presentation that helps guide us in our comments to all of you to describe both what clinics are, what you might be able to do in a clinic, and then gets us into the specific features of the Barton Center and our clinical offerings. So that's where we'll start, and then we'll open it up for questions. So if you will just indulge me, I'm going to go ahead and do all of the screen sharing that will allow us to look at this together. And I hope it's there for you. So as we were introduced, I'm Melissa Carter. I have the privilege to be the director of the Barton Center. I also oversee two of our clinics. And with me is Randy Waldman, who directs our Juvenile Defender Clinic. You'll hear more about all of the clinical offerings very soon, but I'll ask Randy to join me too and just kind of kicking it back and forth to share with you how we understand, what we see in terms of the experiences and opportunities and goals of the clinics and what we hope to deliver to all of you as part of the experiential learning curriculum here at the law school. Randy, I'll just jump in and I'll let you know I cannot see you. So please just jump in as you have something to add. There's too many things going on. So in terms of a law clinic, if you're not otherwise familiar with what a law clinic is, all law schools have law clinics. These are, again, part of the experiential learning curriculum of the law school. The idea is to give you an opportunity to integrate theory with practice, to come out of the classroom and apply your knowledge in ways that have real impact on clients, and for us also on systems. These are instructional programs that are taught here in-house. So you have faculty members overseeing your work, people like me and Professor Waldman. And all of this work is in the area of pro bono legal services. So it has a real public interest bent to it. So in addition to giving you some depth of knowledge in a particular subject matter and an opportunity to acquire and strengthen a particular set of skills that are very translatable, I think it also resonates, these clinical opportunities resonate with students as a way to really kind of put the law to purpose and law to be of service in ways that have, kind of call to you in terms of your cause or the impact that you hope to have. Hours of graded credit in exchange for 150 hours of your time based on the calculation of hours and credit. And I see, by the way, I just got to notice that my internet connection is unstable. Can only blame Emory for that. I'm sitting in my office, but if anything starts to hiccup, we'll make sure we get back online. So continuing, right, clinics, again, your work will be under faculty supervision and with faculty support, but in every way, clinical pedagogy, the design of clinics, is to allow students to be self-directed in your work. So I often talk about it in terms of us being there to set guidance, provide supervision, to give you some instruction, to help elevate your consciousness about what you're doing. But in very many ways, you are the ones doing the work. And I tell all of my students that they're to do the work at the same level that I do it. And that can be the kind of anxiety moment, but faculty members like me and Professor Waldman stand in the gap to help make sure you're doing that at the level of quality and competency that helps you learn and helps us continue to deliver services in a quality way. There are real opportunity to clinics to explore any range of interests. Students come to the clinics because they have an interest in any of the possible subject matters that our clinics represent, but also to, again, acquire skills that are highly transferable to any subject matter area of law and help you be more marketable as you enter your legal career, as well as to build the confidence of having all of those skills. And they expose you to the community, the legal community here, in terms of, at the end of the day, I would say on behalf of both of us, we are practitioners in the Georgia legal community and also at the national level. And so students alongside us then avail themselves of these professional networks of which we're a part. So it helps you build relationships and familiarity and be part of the work as it unfolds alongside of building that portfolio of your work. The specific activities differ with the clinic and at the direction of the clinical supervisor, clinical director, but generally speaking, in our direct practice, our legal services clinics, you're going to be doing the work that you might mostly think of in terms of lawyer-client relationships. And I know I'll actually hand it off to Professor Waldman to share more about the details, because that's very much the design of her clinic in the Juvenile Defender Clinic.
So welcome, everyone. I think Anthony quickly introduced me. I will give you a quick little background, just and I'll turn it back to Professor Carter to do this for herself, but to give some background and history of who I am and maybe how I ended up at Emory. I started my legal career actually at Big Law in New York City, spent 3.5 years there, and then moved to a nonprofit organization doing educational work in New York City, and then moved here to Emory to do the juvenile delinquency work. My juvenile delinquency career started off in a law school clinic, right? So the way I sort of come to this work is as a student of a clinic, learning the material, learning the work, and then pushing me forward to do this as a career. In the Juvenile Defender Clinic, a lot of the skills you get, they are skills that are transferable, whether you want to be a juvenile defense attorney or not. And they are skills that you will gain from a number of our clinics, right? So they are not unique to the Juvenile Defender Clinic. In the Defender Clinic, you're going to maintain attorney-client relationships with your clients, with young people and their families. But in the Policy and Legislative Advocacy Clinic, you're going to maintain relationships with organizational partners. right? So it might not be the same attorney-client relationship where there's privilege and there's confidentiality, but there are organizational partners that you'll be working very closely with. We do prepare cases for trial, draft petitions, motions, right? These are skill building exercises, and I'll talk a little bit more about them when we get directly to the Juvenile Defender Clinic section of this. All of the litigation skills that you would think of when you're preparing a case in a criminal case to go for trial. So that means interviewing witnesses, negotiating alternative outcomes, right? Prosecutorial plea bargaining. In the legislative and policy clinics, you'll obviously be looking at legislation. You'll be analyzing that legislation. You'll be helping to draft legislation for a bill sponsor. In each of our clinics, you're going to be increasing your substantive legal knowledge. Regardless of which clinic you'll be in my clinic, you will learn a large deal about criminal procedure, about the Fourth Amendment, about the Fifth Amendment, about our criminal statute. You'll be learning about evidence codes and evidence rules. In the policy clinic, you will be learning about our substantive laws with respect to child welfare and juvenile justice and how those impact on systems, how those systems impact on families and communities. You will work in teams. In my clinic, you will have teams of 2. In the policy and legislative clinic, those are sometimes a little bit larger, teams of 3 or 2, 3 or 4. And you're going to partner with stakeholders and government agencies and nonprofit organizations in order to achieve our outcomes. And through all of this, as Professor Carter mentioned on the previous slide, we will hopefully help you get to a point where you are evaluating what it is you want to do once you leave Emory Law.
So to take it from here, just so that to kind of orient you to all of the possibilities as we think about what clinics are here and as you familiarize yourself with what clinics are. Emory offers the clinics that are listed here on the slide. So there's the International Humanitarian Law Clinic, directed by Professor Lori Blank. There's the Turner Environmental Law Clinic, directed by Professor Mindy Goldstein. And of course, again, Professor Waldman and I represent most of the faculty of the Barton Child Law and Policy Center. And we have several different clinical offerings within our center that we'll dive into now a little more substantively. The Barton Center has its own history, its own origin story, tracks back now 20 years, where we started just as the Barton Clinic and really just on the policy and legislative side of system advocacy and improvement. The idea from our founders was very much to invite into conversations about system accountability and transparency, and particularly here, these systems being child-serving systems, the skills and perspective of lawyers, you all as emerging lawyers. And through the design of what we have here at the Policy Center, we have the great privilege to be working with students to help you get exposure and skills and maybe an appetite for this kind of work in the juvenile advocacy or child law and family law and policy realms. But also then through you all as kind of an engine of our kind of horsepower and brain power and capacity to expand our impact, again, in the areas that are confined by our mission. Our mission is to promote and protect the legal rights and interests of children who are involved with our child serving systems here in Georgia and nationally, that being our child welfare, our juvenile justice systems, or related court systems. Much of our work, though, that being the entry point, also addresses other adjacent systems. So, right, education, the criminal justice system, mental and behavioral health, somewhat in the disability realm as well. You all, students who are enrolled in our clinics, serve as student attorneys, right? We might refer to you as interns. I think functionally, most of us think about you as associates. Very much we here feel like we operate like a nonprofit law office, and you all are part of that. Again, doing the kinds of activities that Professor Waldman just reviewed. So in our public policy and legislative advocacy clinics, you're doing that. You're participating in the development of public policy, in the selection of policy advocacy strategies, in the execution of legislative advocacy strategies, all with the intention to improve how our child serving systems work in order that they get better results for the children and families that are engaged with them. And we mean that in a number of different ways. Also through our Juvenile Defender Clinic and our Appeal for Youth Clinic, you're providing representation, direct legal services to individual clients. So at any given semester, we're operating 3 clinics at any one time, but we have 4 total. And that's because the policy and legislative advocacy clinics change. The policy clinic is offered in the fall. And in that policy clinic, my goal is to expose students to a broad range of policy development and policy advocacy strategies. And through that, to help you make careful selections about the strategy that best serves a moment or an issue, or perhaps an organizational client objective. And then in the spring, we shift a little bit. These 2 clinics are highly complementary, both are system advocacy clinics, but we do the legislative advocacy clinic in the spring because it runs concurrent with our state legislative session. So instead of doing, building the deep expertise and doing the kind of self-paced work of incremental policy development and advocacy that we do in the fall, in the spring, we are executing a single strategy. We are just executing legislative advocacy, the idea of moving policy through a political process and actually enshrining policy as law. And so students, the work is similar in those ways that connect policy with legislation, but the actual activities and daily experience is a bit different in that students are doing direct advocacy work at our state capitol, working with members of our General Assembly and the governor's office to build expertise, to craft proposals, to advocate and educate, and make some stuff happen there consistent with our mission. Every semester, and I'll turn this over now to Professor Waldman, who of course is best situated to talk about the Juvenile Defender Clinic, but just to round out, every semester, we offer the Juvenile Defender Clinic and also the Appeal for Youth Clinic. And actually, we may want to do it this way.
I say if you go to the next slide.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I've already, like, I sort of got ahead of myself and just using that summary slide, but here's a bit more description of the legislative and advocacy clinics that I just summarized for you and what you'd be doing. A lot of research and writing activities, again, speaking to reforming or improving systems through policy. And so that means, again, a lot of research and writing, but also gathering of stakeholder perspectives, synthesizing information in ways that orient to a particular perspective geared towards improvement. Here you'll see the academic requirements, which we might as well pause here and talk about some of these because they track across our clinics so that clinics are open to 2Ls and 3Ls. I've mentioned already that here they are available for 3 hours of graded course credit. And that requires then a minimum of 150 hours of your time to earn that 3 hours of graded credit. For each, there is preferred either prerequisite, co-requisite, or preferred coursework in areas that you might expect, these substantive areas of juvenile and family law or child advocacy. And for each clinic, there will be a weekly clinic meeting. Some of these would kind of design these things slightly differently at an individualized clinic level, but every clinic has a weekly mandatory clinic meeting, which is an opportunity to come back together as a group, do some instruction and some cross-sharing and build community, and generally, manage the work from the week before and prepare for the week ahead. There will be regular clinic hours. That 150 hours of your time is broken up into essentially 11 to 12 hours of each week dedicated to clinic work. And then there's always an opportunity for field notes or other reflective writing to build this habit of self-reflection so that you understand how you're developing as a lawyer and how your professional identity relates to the work at hand. Now we're back on track.
So the Juvenile Defender Clinic is exactly what it sounds like, right? It is in easiest descriptive ways. We are a mini public defender office. We serve young people who are indigent, who are referred to us from the public defender's offices in either DeKalb or Fulton counties for a variety of reasons, right? They will sometimes refer a case to us because I need cases and you all are here and ready to start working, and I will ask them for some cases and they'll take a look at a file and hand me some stuff. But sometimes also because there are cases that have that are complex that they think we will be better at digging into, that have some crossover education issues that we will be looking into a little bit better. Sometimes some conflict cases that come to us. There are a variety of reasons why we'll end up with a case. We end up representing these young people from beginning to end throughout the course of the semester. Juvenile court works very quickly. And so during the course of a semester, Emory students generally represent 3-ish young people in their hearings, from beginning to end. Cases start and end in about 4 to 6 weeks. So you get a case, you finish it, you get a case, you finish it, you get a case, you finish it over the course of the semester. Those, while you're in the clinic, you are first chair of your case. You work in teams, you work with pairs who represent each young person under my very, very close supervision, but you are first chair. We are currently in the midst of a 3-day trial. 2 days down, day 3 will be coming up next Tuesday. And the law students have so far done the opening argument. I think they've done 11 cross-examinations all on their own. They will do one more on Tuesday, and then they will deliver the closing argument. I am there with them. I serve as second chair on those trials, maybe second and a half chair. I don't know. They're co-first chairs. I'm second. And they work through those cases 100% as though they were first chair, as any other attorney would do. I will say that Emory is a little bit unique in that Georgia has a Student Practice Act that is open and eligible to 2Ls as well as 3Ls. That is a new trend in legal education that Georgia jumped the gun on. I think we were the second state to allow 2Ls to practice. There are now a few others that do that, but in a lot of jurisdictions, you have to be a 3L in order to do student practice work. While you're working on a case, you live the life of a defender. So you do all of the work. You interview your clients. After you interview your clients, you develop case theory and case strategy. And what happens next is completely up to where the case file takes us. Sometimes that is drafting motions and preparing for and trying motions. Sometimes that's interviewing witnesses. Sometimes that's going out to a crime scene. Whatever happens next is truly driven by whatever case moment is there. We do also, outside of the juvenile court context, work on special education and school discipline cases for all of our clients as necessary if needed. That covers the gist of it. And then I know there's a question out here. Do you want to start interspersing some of these answers, Melissa, or do you
Well,
want
I think we actually might be close to the end. Let me just round
right.
this out real quickly, and then we'll turn to questions and take them all as a whole. Because my guess is probably have lots of questions that are shared. To give you a sense of just sort of where we are in terms of our clinical offerings, we also have an appellate offering. So you've heard from Professor Waldman about our trial offering. You've heard from me about our system improvement work. We also have an appellate offering called the Appeal for Youth Clinic that's directed by an adjunct clinical instructor. There too, you're going to have clients, but you're going to be obviously working on those cases at an appellate level. So seeking post-conviction relief primarily to the class of offenders we refer to as youthful offenders, who are all those juveniles who committed serious violent felonies as children and therefore were tried and convicted and are serving sentences as adults. And so, of course, there's been some changes at the U.S. Supreme Court level over the course of the last decade and a half in terms of the punishments, the severity of punishment that can be issued to children, to offenders who committed crimes as children. This is where, for example, all of our juvenile life without parole resentencing happens. So there too, students are responsible for all the aspects of that attorney-client relationship, the management of the case, all the in-court advocacy, as you can see there, along with brief writing, et cetera. That too open to 2Ls and 3Ls with all the same kind of specs that we've already reviewed. Just so you know, we offer a few other things too, try to be as kind of broad in our offerings as we can be. We do administer a summer child advocacy program that we've administered for, again, a couple of decades, where we recruit students, primarily law students, but also students from other graduate disciplines from across the country, and support you in paid child advocacy placements for the summer. So you can learn more about that as well and know that that's a feature of our center. And then also the Know Your Rights program, which is an extracurricular program that Professor Waldman provides supervision and guidance to. Do you want to say more about that?
That program is something that we designed when I first got here to provide young people, and we do this in a variety of settings. We do it in middle schools, high schools, and after school programs as our primary 3 We also work with young adults, 18 to 21, in some of the homeless shelters run by Covenant House and Lost and Found, just to let them know how they should interact with police officers. What are their rights when an officer stops them for a variety of reasons? That program is operated entirely through law students. I provide supervision. I look at their training materials, which they update somewhat regularly. But otherwise, the law students run it. There are student coordinators, and then they bring 4 or 5 student volunteers with them to each of the sessions.
Probably brings us to a conclusion. Oh, so if you have questions about clinics, in addition to the ones we're about to take here and have discussion about, this is just a slide to give you all the contact information for the various directors, the directors of the various clinics that we've just mentioned. So feel free to reach out to directors and they can answer any specific questions you have and are happy to do so. And I'm sure that brings us to the end. So I'm going to stop sharing here and we'll move forward with our Q&A.
Great. Yeah. Thank you both so much for that. It was a great presentation, and hopefully you all learned a bit more about all the various and different types of work that you can get involved with Barton. So let's go to your questions now. I saw 2 questions that came in while we were presenting from Caleb and Robin. So we'll get both of you up first to ask your questions, and they're kind of interrelated. But for the rest of you, if you have questions, please use that chat box, use the question and answer, and we'll be able to get you in front of the professor here to ask your question. But Caleb, you were the first one in, so let's get you up if you want to ask your question.
Got it. I actually had a couple questions. I apologize. Just to confirm that basically 2Ls can apply, or you can apply to and be in the policy clinic as a 2L, correct?
So 2Ls are eligible to apply. So all of the clinical offerings are available to 2Ls and 3Ls. Let me pause and go a little bit into the details about how we go about selecting students. Because of the quality of the experience that we're talking about here, the student to faculty ratios are small, which means that we have limited enrollment slots in our clinics because of its experiential design. So we open up an application cycle that is in the semester prior to the semester that you are seeking to enroll. So for example, this is the spring semester. We are working through the ends of the application and interview cycle for the fall, the upcoming fall. So students will apply usually through our electronic system, application system. We receive those, we screen those applications. Again, those applications can be from 2Ls and 3Ls or rising 2Ls and 3Ls. And then we conduct interviews and make a selection based on that. So all of that should tell you what I need to underscore, which is that admission to or enrollment in the clinics is competitive. It's competitive both in terms of the qualifications that we're seeking, but also probably most competitive in terms of the management of the numbers. We always have more applicants than enrollment slots on any given semester. But I think Professor Waldman would say this too. We often advise students that if you persist in your interest in the clinic and in your pursuit of the kind of coursework and other experiences that make you competitive in other ways, you will be able to get into a clinical experience. We believe in making sure these are available to the most students and responsive to student interest.
Got it. So that's kind of what being a competitive candidate would look like for applying for the clinic.
I think so. I mean, we're all looking for something slightly differently, but I would say, generically, the way this is always, of course, a relevant and important question. I always tell students that I'm really looking for students who are very open to the experience. The experience itself, we shape. We have lots of experience offering these clinics semester by semester, but what you get out of them is pretty unique to you. All students show up with a different baseline of experience, familiarity from coursework or otherwise with the substantive area of law, different, again, strength of skills and experience with those skills. And the experience itself, I can tell you, for example, our legislative advocacy clinic this semester, it's probably unique. I've done legislative work in Georgia for 20 years. I've been here on the faculty for 11 leading this program, and I've never had a session like the one that I am currently participating in with my students. So what we thought we were going to offer students turned out to be quite different for a lot of dynamics that are interesting, but beyond the scope of this conversation. And so those students, I'm really looking for them to kind of elevate and just step back and take in what it is there is to learn. And students both leave our clinics, I think, with greater depth of subject matter, certainly greater and broader and perhaps strengthened skills. But the piece I think that students often don't expect, where there is a tremendous amount of learning, is in the professionalism piece, is in the interpersonal work, in our collaborative teams, really understanding more about yourself in terms of your leadership and conflict management and project management, and other related kinds of things that really help you leave a more fully formed professional. So I'm really looking for that kind of openness to learning, whatever it is, and curiosity about all of it.
And I'll join in on the Juvenile Defender Clinic side. I will say that both clinics, I think all three of our clinical offerings have 2Ls each of the semesters. I generally, in the fall semester of 2L year, that is the toughest time to be a 2L. I generally take 8 students in the fall, 6 3Ls, 2 2Ls, but that number has changed. I don't ever let just one 2L come in, so I guarantee 2 spots to 2Ls as we go through this process. So it is, right, it is not out of the question that as a 2L, you will be invited to join the Juvenile Defender Clinic. It happens every semester that we've been open to 2Ls. That said, for me, right, because it is the toughest time to be a clinic student, because you have not taken the relevant courses, you have not done any trial techniques work. What I am looking for as a 2L is somebody who is probably been either one of 2 things, right? Fully engaged in a public defender office as their 1L summer. So has some crim law experience and exposure to the issues, or, and this is actually one of the big ones, a prior school teacher, right? Who has experienced some of the issues and the workings with my clients before they enter the clinic. And so those are really 2 of the main routes to get to me as a first semester 2L. Those routes open up as you become a second semester 2L, right? As you become a second semester 2L, if you have taken criminal procedure or education law or family law, and you have demonstrated working with some of these issues on an academic level, if not on a actual experience level, that ups your candidacy greatly. And then for 3Ls, I'm truly open to anyone who wants to learn, right? I think as a 3L, you will have taken the coursework, you will have done trial techniques. Many of my 3Ls are not going into juvenile defense or child welfare law in any way. But right, anyone who's interested and wants to participate is usually, right, and again, we can't guarantee a spot to everybody, but if you keep trying, right, there's nobody who's tried 3 times before who doesn't get in on the 4th try. So start trying early and keep coming back to us to demonstrate your interest and take the relevant coursework, and you'll make it in.
Excellent. Thanks, Caleb. Good to hear from you. We did get a question in the chat that was related as well. So Professor Waldman, I'll direct this one to you, but Connie won't be able to unmute yourself, but she wanted to know if there's an application process to become part of the Know Your Rights program.
There's not. The Know Your Rights program is open to 1Ls. I am so far not involved in the daily operations of it, but my understanding of how the Know Your Rights program works is that early in your 1L year, they hold an information session and a training session for anybody who's interested in participating. You then get signed up on a Google Doc sort of mailing list thing. And anytime there's an event, I think they have a Google Doc with events as they go up, and you can just sign up for them. They do go fast, right? But there is no application process. There's no prior experience required. Anybody who wants to participate is eligible to participate, welcome to participate. There is a student-run application process to become one of the coordinators. So generally speaking, folks, 1Ls who become super involved during their first semester 1L year through the first half of the second semester, then get chosen by their 2L and 3Ls who are the 3Ls who are rolling off step up and co-coordinate that program.
Excellent, thank you. We got one more question in our queue, so we'll get to that one next. But now's a good time if you have any final questions you want to get in, type them in the chat or send us a Q&A and we'll get there. Otherwise, we'll wrap up after this. But I saw Robin had a question as well about the amount of opportunities and all of that. So Robin, you should be able to unmute yourself and welcome to the session.
Hi, thank you so much. It seemed to me like the legislative advocacy clinic in the fall really kind of dovetails into the other ones. And I was wondering if there's a possibility for students to do more than one, or if it's limited based on the fact that there are so many students applying.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Good to chat with you. Appreciate your question. So the legislative advocacy clinic is actually in the spring. So in the fall, I'll just what we have available under the Barton Center is actually the policy clinic, the juvenile defender clinic, and the appeal for youth clinic. And then in the spring, we have the legislative advocacy clinic, the juvenile defender clinic, and the appeal for youth clinic. But you're absolutely right that the policy and legislative clinics are very related. And so what happens is that we enroll students in all of our clinics, in any clinic at Emory, on a semester by semester basis. And so that's one partial answer, a little bit to the side of your question. Your actual question in terms of whether you can take more than one of these clinics, the answer is not in the same semester, but yes, over the course of your 2L and 3L year, you can take as many clinics as you want. The ABA requirements now are that you have 6 hours of experiential learning as a graduation requirement. You can acquire those through clinics is a really great example, also through externships, some simulation and other classes that are specially designated, but that's really your invitation to take as many clinics as you want. And at least 2 experiential learning things generally to make up that 6 hours of credit. And the only other rule that we have here at Emory is that you can't do a clinic and an externship in the same semester. That's a general rule with very few and limited exceptions. And that really is just because of how much it taxes your time. That's a lot of commitment, both of your time and just mental capacity and availability to satisfy. And so you can only do one clinic each semester, but you can do multiple clinics over the course of your 2L and 3L years, if that is responsive. And your further question about clinic and journal, yes, we have many students who do clinic and journal at the same time.
Okay, thank you so much. If you guys are able are you able to send us that last slide with all the contact information on it? I would really appreciate having that.
We can get that out in an email, yeah, to the larger group with all of the clinic contacts. We can definitely make that available for you for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to piggyback, Robin, on Professor Carter's comments, we have a large number of students who know that they want to do child law in some form, who do 2 semesters of policy clinic, followed by legislative clinic, followed by the juvenile defender clinic. And so we sort of cross-pollinate with great regularity for those who know that this is their career path.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes, and a very apt analogy for the pollen that's about to come our way. Excellent. So it looks like Elvis has his hand raised. So let's go to Elvis. We'll make this our final question before we wrap up. Elvis, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm doing well, thank you, Anthony, and good afternoon, professors. My question relates to the Legislative Advocacy Clinic. I'm wondering if you could perhaps share a little bit more about how that advocacy takes place. Is it, sort of arguing or presenting information at legislative hearings, and also what type of bills are students advocating for?
Sure. Thanks for your question. I could talk about this forever, but we'll try to make it concise. This is work that I love and that students, I think, find super exciting, especially if you have a little bit of a political bug and can appreciate this process as a means to an end to effectuate policy. So to start kind of where you ended, we track between roughly 3 and 4 dozen bills each session that relate to the Barton Center's mission area. So again, thinking about this idea of public regulation of the family, the public law aspects of family regulation. Again, is speaking in terms specifically of the juvenile justice system and the child welfare system or the juvenile court system, or how children and families involved with those systems get tangled up in other systems, criminal justice being a big one. And so that's how we select from our bills. And the students themselves are responsible for tracking legislation. So you get assigned those bills to track, and therefore to be the person who is directly responsible for knowing where that bill is at in the lawmaking process, and also having the most expertise. Students speak with sponsors. They appear at committee hearings. They may provide testimony. They may be involved in drafting of legislation or amendments to legislation. And otherwise all the other aspects of direct advocacy, which also include working with other advocates in either formal or informal coalitions, providing research to members and talking points and education to advocates or others who might be interested. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out to make sure that our community of, well, the public at large, but certainly people tend to be of the community of these systems, stakeholders, stay informed about what's going on and how things are progressing and the nature of policy conversations as they relate to children and families. So the students are down at the Capitol at our Gold Dome during those 11 to 12 hours a week that they're satisfying, doing all that work of essentially a lobbyist on behalf of our issues.
Great, excellent. Thanks for your question, Elvis. Appreciate it, and good to see you. So we'll wrap up here. I think we got a good cross section of kind of everything that Barton has to offer. So thank you all for your questions. I do like to ask one question of our professors as we end the session, just to give some students more insight into Emory a little bit. So I'll leave it up to you all who wants to take a crack at this one first, but I always like to end on kind of what brought you to Emory in the first place, and what's keeping you here after all these years.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a really, it's my story, right? So what brought me to Emory is actually the Barton Center. And I don't mean that in my current position. When I was a student at the University of Illinois in my second year, my first summer, as I was a rising 2L, I spent in DC doing legislation on the Big Hill. And then my second summer, I was really interested in these areas of child and family law and policy, and trying to kind of self-navigate at that time to a career in child advocacy, whatever that was going to mean for me. And I had a friend here enrolled at Emory, and she mentioned to me the Emory Summer Child Advocacy Program, which is that summer program I mentioned had been around for a while. And I actually applied and participated in my second summer through SCAP, and came down here, as we refer to it, met the folks at the then Barton Clinic, which was smaller and differently populated, and the community of stakeholders who are now my professional network and friends, and really got to sink my teeth into this work in a way that felt very meaningful and very much lived up to whatever I thought it meant to be doing child advocacy as a lawyer. At the time, the Barton Clinic had just begun a postgraduate fellowship program, which we still have. And so I was invited to apply, and postgraduate fellowship at the Barton Clinic was my first job out of law school. That's what actually brought me full time to Emory and Atlanta and kept me here, was that I actually got my foothold in this very fulfilling career through the Barton Clinic. At this point, it all sounds like I had some grand master plan. I did not. I left the Barton Clinic and did a bunch of work in government and in private practice, both in Georgia and in my home state of Illinois, always in these areas of child welfare and dependency mostly. And then had the opportunity, after serving in a gubernatorial appointed role under a previous administration here in Georgia, as the faculty was changing here, to apply for this director level position. And that's what then brought me back to this role, which I've been here for 11 years. So it did come full circle. It's this place that I get to now be a part of every day, was very much what gave meaning to this career that I aspired to have. It's very much the reason that I believe in the return on the investment that was made in me, and that what we can do for students who come through here. So we are a family here. We are a community of practice. We believe in all of the work that we do and all of the good work that students are capable of. And that's what keeps me here for sure.
Should have gone first and let Melissa end on that. I was nowhere near as cool as hers. I think I mentioned earlier that I started my legal career, as I like to think of it, as a law student in a clinic at the University of Chicago. I spent my 1L summer, my 2L, 3L years, and my 3L summers all working in the criminal defense division of the Mandel Legal Aid Clinic, doing juvenile delinquency work. I detoured for 10 years in New York City, some big law, some education law, which is super connected, right? And is part of what I do. always with a desire to become Herschella Conyers, who was my clinic director, right? So I left law school and I was like, how do I be Herschella Conyers? And started this path. While in New York, I loved my job. It was a great job, but I was trying to do the clinic work, the mentorship, the supervision, while remaining connected to my clients of being a clinical professor. And Emory had a job opening and hired me 16 years ago, and here I am, right? So it's a little bit less thought out, less careful. I applied to a variety of places, and Emory is the one who said yes. So they are now stuck with me because Emory is the one who said yes. 16 years later, my friends in New York continue to think that I have a Southern accent now. My friends in Georgia do not believe that I have a Southern accent yet. And so sometimes I say the word y'all. Actually, a lot of times I say the word y'all, and I've acclimated, and here I am.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you both so much for your time and for talking with our students. This is a great session, and appreciate all the insights, and I know our students do as well, as they're trying to decide kind of what the best options for them are in terms of their legal education and their career pathways forward. So this is super helpful. Thank you both. Thank you to everybody who joined us this afternoon. Appreciate your time. Like I said, hopefully we'll see you for our events next week. As always, if you have any questions or any other information needed, please email me directly, and we're happy to get that all for you and make any connections possible. So appreciate you all. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week, and welcome to Emory.
Great. Thanks. Good luck. Look forward to meeting all of you.
Oh, thank you.